This is a recording of a presentation delivered at the 42nd Annual West Indian Literature Conference at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus on Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. Good afternoon, everyone. T20 cricket, Thurto, and book clubs. I'm on the panel with all the vibes, it seems. My name is Rhea Manley, and I'm a Jamaican poet, educator, and member of the book reading club, Rebel Women Lit. Today I will present a paper co-authored with Trinbagonian poet and activist Amílcar Sanatan, Book Clubs and Community Space Making in the Contemporary Caribbean, Rebel Women Lit in Jamaica. We have a simple intervention. We want to situate Caribbean book clubs as key actors in Caribbean literature through their reproduction of Caribbean readers who are essential to the production, consumption, and distribution of Caribbean literature, contextualize the emergence of youth and women-led book clubs in the Caribbean, their feminist politics, reimagining of literature in our societies, and their space-making practices. And last, we argue that contemporary book clubs in the Caribbean engage with Caribbean literature are not only rooted in feminist movements, but are part of them themselves. In 2021, the popular lifestyle online platform Oprah Daily published a feature entitled The 7 Best Caribbean Books for Your 2021 Reading List, according to Rebel Women Lit's Readers Awards. The article highlighted the significance of Rebel Women Lit's Caribbean Reader Awards, which generated over 1,800 votes from the regional reading public. Interestingly, the article stated that Rebel Women Lit is a communal space where you don't have to study literature at a university to have access to work outside of what is considered canon. With their book club meetings, local community libraries, playlists, and merchandise, Rebel Women Lit seeks to center authors whose work not only falls outside of the mainstream, but that pushes back on colonial ideas and narratives. As authors, we seek to make an intervention in this discussion. We do not do this because of the external validation of a US-based media platform, though it is worthy to acknowledge the increasing networks of the Jamaican-based Rebel Women Lit. Rather, we aim to critically unpack the political discourses and practices of Rebel Women Lit members and their contribution to the development of the Caribbean literary landscape. Caribbean book clubs remain largely unknown as far as scholarly research is concerned. We aim to unearth the gendered power relations that constitute book clubs in the Caribbean. They are youth and often women-led organizations with local, regional, and international networks which participate in public and face-to-face virtual mobilizations. Book clubs, whether in the form of reading societies, salons, or informal gatherings of readers and discussants, have existed since the dawn of book publishing. Book clubs in particular are a collective space for exchange, interpretation of texts, development of effective bonds in the public sphere, and they transform private reading as a solitary act among individuals to an intersubjective dialogue process within a collective. Readers participate in book clubs for a range of reasons, including leisure, self-education, and relationship building. They are popular and meaningful forms of cultural activity. Contemporary book clubs are composed primarily of middle-class, well-educated women, mostly over the age of 40. In the case of Rebel Women Lit, the group is predominantly middle-class, university-trained women between the ages of 25 and 40. Albeit, book clubs in some contexts are not limited to a social practice for formally educated or university-trained readers. There are several types of book clubs or reading groups: study groups, informal educational spaces and social organizations such as the church, consumer groups for the specific purchase of curated books by an organization, literacy groups, book reading for collective learning and education, and literary book clubs. In this paper, we specifically discuss Rebel Women Lit as a literary book club in the Caribbean that engages in the study and discussion of literary texts, primarily fiction and non-fiction. We applied a decolonial and feminist approach as a way to think from the perspective of otherness and align ourselves with the social and economic struggles of Global South women. A decolonial framework involves considering ways of thinking about the world which take colonialism, empire, and racism as its empirical and discursive objects of study. This research initiative involved the collection of 6 semi-structured interviews with members of the Rebel Women Lit Book Club. The founder and 5 ordinary members were interviewed over a 1-month period in August 2024. Interviews were conducted face-to-face and virtually via the Zoom meeting platform. With the exception of the founder of Rebel Women Lit, research participants' names were given pseudonyms. It is important to identify the subject positions of both authors in this paper. Amílcar Sanatan is a cisgender, heterosexual Afro-Caribbean man, Trinbagonian activist researcher. I am a cisgender, heterosexual, mixed ethnicity woman, Jamaican, poet and educator. For full disclosure, I have been an active member of the Rebel Women Lit Book Club since 2019. To our knowledge, this has not presented an ethical dilemma in this research study. Instead, it reiterated the importance of explicitly stating the positionalities of researchers in this research. Rebel Women Lit is a community-based reading group founded in 2017 by Jeraine Patmore. The first Rebel Women Lit meeting was a birthday celebration including Patmore's friends. She wanted them to discuss Audre Lorde's Sister Outsider and asked that they read it ahead of the meet. From there, the club has subsequently grown and evolved. Since Rebel Women Lit's establishment, the group has had a vibrant online presence, a newsletter, a mobile physical and digital library, a bookstore, and 2 podcasts, like a real book club, a podcast about books and everything else, and Under the Sycamore Tree, a Caribbean feminist archival podcast that documents queer and women-led organizations across 8 Caribbean countries who make up the women voices and leadership, hosted a digital literary festival, as well as an online literary magazine, and the Abortion Monologues, which includes first-hand accounts of individuals who have had abortions. That Rebel Women Lit hosts the Abortion Monologues on their site as a creative strategy to raise consciousness on women's reproductive rights and brands merchandise with print, such as Blood Clot Feminist, indicates their signaling of their Caribbean feminist politics. Moreover, Rebel Women Lit explicitly positions itself as being a queer, feminist space, and members are generally attracted to the space based on the group's stated ideals and the text which they read each month, which are largely written by queer women in the Caribbean and African diasporas. Rebel Women Lit, through its activities, is a literary community for radical reimaginings. Ira Mather observed that book clubs in the Caribbean played a critical role in amplifying Caribbean authors in a global publishing industry that relegated the region's literature to the margins. Self-published texts, regionally published books, and books published by select independent presses in the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States of America have difficulty circulating in international economies and literary spaces with limited financial resources dedicated to marketing and publicity. They note, apart from a handful of writers picked by big budget conglomerate publishers, writers and poets for whom words are a vocation have toiled, dug deep, and devoted their entire lives to writing, can find themselves adrift on this ocean of books after being published. To date, there are several book clubs based in the Caribbean that organize reading sessions and social events in face-to-face, virtual, and hybrid format. A few examples of these book clubs are Book Limer's Book Club in Barbados, Book of Sins Book Club in Trinidad and Tobago and also Jamaica, Rebel Women Lit in Jamaica, and the Pelican Book Club in Trinidad and Tobago, which create spaces for Caribbean readers. Now we would like to discuss some of the findings from our data collection. We consider Rebel Women Lit's concept of safe spaces, politics of curatorship, and finally, consciousness raising. Safe spaces are ethical and collectively determined practices in social organizations, particularly feminist influence groups, to reduce harm and protect the well-being of participants. Rebel Women Lit explicitly promotes the creation of safe spaces for intimate, queer, and lit spaces filled with mutual respect, playful curiosity, and radical joy. Their case also provides insight into safe spaces in women-only groups and how they are managed and experienced. Louis Etelio assessed the gendered nature of spaces by interrogating women's experiences of women-only safe spaces. This practice takes on a particular relevance in Jamaica against a background of Caribbean homophobias and social exclusions against people from diverse gender and sexual identifications. These social norms are deeply influenced by historical colonial norms that influence the racialization and sexualization of bodies on the region. Jeraine Patmore explains, the name, Rebel Women Lit itself, tends to make it a safe space for certain ideas, but also, kind of very tongue-in-cheek, it also makes it unsafe for other ideas. Because I think when creating a safe space for certain ideas to thrive, there's an understanding that there are other ideas that will be discouraged. The creation of safe spaces in public and virtual settings is part of the radical imagining of the social and spatial realities of Jamaica by Rebel Women Lit. Media representations of LGBTQ+ women and symbolic upholding of criminal law provisions on gross indecency and unnatural crimes reinforce heterosexist norms in the Caribbean. Carla Russell, a book club member, reflects, I remember when we started the book club, one of the members said to me that this was a bit like a culture shock. It's everything I've wanted, but I didn't know that it was a thing, and I've met people that are okay with me. Rebel Women Lit advances a decolonial approach to the reading and curatorship of literature. As a book club, it centers the voices of Caribbean and African diaspora writers, primarily, but not exclusively, women and queer voices. This is part of the intersectional feminist politics of the organization in relation to reading and curatorship. Developing book lists, distributing books through the mobile bookstore and library, and fostering online publicity through interviews for authors expands readers' knowledge of contemporary Caribbean literature. This has led to personal practices of members connecting with regional literature and developing a Read Caribbean shelf at home. Carla Russell shares, between our list and when Book of Sin started her Read Caribbean month, my shelves just got way better because there was a definite connection between that and getting rid of all these white books I had. Like I have an entire Read Caribbean shelf of Caribbean books I bought from Rebel Women Lit's bookstore. It's almost like now I'm definitely going to pick something up because it's a Caribbean author. We posit that the Rebel Women Lit Book Club is a site for feminist consciousness raising. Collective book reading is therefore a pedagogical tool used by the women in the club to understand their relationship to social structures and politics in everyday life in a collective, by way of sustained dialogue along principles of safety and inclusion, attitudes, beliefs, and values, and persistently exchange and catalyze personal and group transformation. Members of Rebel Women Lit have utilized the infrastructure of the club to organize mutual aid initiatives for hurricane relief after Beryl's recent landfall, and domestic violence and other individuals in crisis, and cite the influence of the book club in expanding their personal politics gained through reading and interpreting Caribbean fiction texts and other assigned non-fiction texts. Members speak to an increased awareness and sensitivity about marginalized groups such as people with disabilities, fat bodies, and care workers, which was possible through book club readings and discussions. Patrice Henry is of the view that book clubs contribute to social change. She shared, I've been a lot more vocal, particularly about issues like fat phobia and disability inclusion, and I'm still in the process of even thinking about my personal views on care work and how that relates to disability, but it's definitely affected how I interact with the world. Book clubs have increased the visibility of not only Caribbean writers, but the Caribbean reader. Since 2017, Rebel Women Lit has enhanced the visibility of young women and queer Jamaicans in authorship and the public domain, developed a safe space for community building against a backdrop of heterosexist violence and social intolerance, and has amplified the role of Caribbean readership based in the region for authors and the publishing industry. The book club is no less a contributor to an actor in Caribbean feminist, gender, and sexual justice movement building. And so, Rebel Women Lit and the burgeoning book club scene, to potentially varying degrees, should be framed as both literary and social movements that are transforming Caribbean society through community space-making practices of gender and sexuality inclusion. To close, I would like to deliver a poem that I wrote as a tribute to the organizers and members of Rebel Women Lit, Sundays Are for Book Club. After a week of sucking salt, squeezing time to read as much as you can, here we are. No hard agenda. Sundays are for book club. We unravel Lord. Talk about how we heard she writes from here. Disagree about Patsy's choice to leave True for New York as we consider the weight of an absent mother's warmth being as deep as a barrel. In the Zoom, we see cutting board, pumpkin, wash day, some kind of conversation off screen. The topic shifts. Radically soft community in praxis. 4 hours deep, someone pries their eyes open in Spanish madrugada. Someone calls out, what about lunch? My tummy rumbles. But no, not yet. Not for mislaid trad wife fantasies we really ought not fuel. Not to contend with sacrosanct profanities or the dread of the looming week. Sundays are for book club. Thank you.